If the Shroud of Turin is a trace of suffering left in silence, then the 1917 Fatima apparitions were a thunderclap of truth that erupted in broad daylight. Unlike any other mystical phenomenon, Fatima did not take place in the shadows of temples or in the imagination of hermits. It unfolded under the sun of a century yearning to deny the transcendent, challenging humanity's materialist mindset head-on. On October 13, 1917, at Cova da Iria, Portugal, 70,000 people witnessed an event that, if described in ancient texts, would have been called an apocalypse. Yet this was not the end of the world, but rather the day the boundaries of the material world were pierced. Imagine a sky filled with torrential rain, the ground turned into muddy, sodden earth where tens of thousands of people stood shivering from the cold and the tension of waiting. Then, suddenly, the clouds parted and the sun appeared, not as the usual blinding ball of fire, but as a muted silver disk that could be looked at directly with the naked eye. And then it began to spin. Not the gentle rotation of celestial bodies, but a wild, frenzied whirl, casting out beams of brilliant light that dyed everything in vibrant colors. The climax came in that moment when it danced across the sky and plunged toward the crowd like a monster of fire. 70,000 people, including atheist journalists who had come to scoff, all fell to their knees in terror. Science has attempted to explain it away, through mass hallucination or atmospheric phenomena, but no theory can account for why the clothes of 70,000 people, soaked in muddy slush, were suddenly and completely dry in an instant thereafter. In spiritual terms, this was a compulsive divine presence. It was the moment God forced humanity, those who pridefully believe they have mastered the universe, to realize that this universe does not operate according to what we write in textbooks, but according to the will of the Creator. The mystery of Fatima does not end with a celestial phenomenon. It also lies in the secrets entrusted to the three shepherd children. The prophecies regarding World War II, the rise of communism, and the collapse of empires were not mere idle predictions. They were warnings deeply infused with spiritual significance. The spiritual perspective here is profound. History is not an immutable path of destiny. On the contrary, Fatima is an affirmation of human free will. God sent the Virgin Mary not to announce unavoidable catastrophes, but to call for repentance. The underlying message is, if humanity returns to love and prayer, the course of history will change. This is a revolutionary spiritual concept. The prayer of a single soul can be the factor that tips the balance of an entire century filled with blood and tears. The secrets of Fatima are a reminder that we are not puppets of history. We are its co-authors through our choices between good and evil, between turning in repentance or persisting in atheistic arrogance. Why did people feel fear at Fatima? That fear did not stem from a demonic presence, but from absolute purity. When the finite encounters the infinite, the finite trembles, realizing its own smallness and sinfulness. The event at Fatima was a collective purification. In theology, this phenomenon is known as spiritual awakening. Those who came to Fatima, from impoverished farmers to arrogant intellectuals, returned with transformed souls. They understood that death is not a distant prospect, and that the presence of God is not merely a religious theory, but a reality as tangible as the dry ground they touched after the rain. Fatima teaches us the humility of reason. When reason cannot provide an explanation, instead of resorting to denial, humanity is forced to open its heart to higher realities. Fatima reminds us, God does not need miracles to prove his existence, but at times, he performs them to awaken a humanity sleeping in indifference. It is a maternal call, a plea rising from the other side of reality, reminding us that behind the chaos of war and politics, there is a hand still guiding the destiny of mankind. If only people would stop, look up at the sky, and begin a journey of interior conversion. That is the greatest secret of Fatima. Salvation always lies in our hands, provided we dare to believe in the guidance of the infinite.